Arise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horus, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Othmere, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless, a tarnished of no renown.
What's up, crew? Welcome back to Libertalia Games Supply. Today we are going to take a look at Skull Servant Horus. Now, the idea for this deck was presented to me by a friend of mine. I'll credit him here. His original deck list I'll also show on the screen here right now. Now, this list was built for like a for fun format that is not TCG congruent, and so I adjusted it so that it would be TCG congruent. So I want to give a huge thank you to him for allowing me to present to you with my version of Horus Skull Servant. Now, there are some inherent issues with the deck, and it's just because of the nature of the effects of King of the Skull Servant, which is your win condition, requiring as many copies of itself or clones of itself in the graveyard as possible in order to attack for game. That issue being that you need to run all of the clones with the effects that allow you to load up that graveyard with as many Skull Servant-like cards as possible in order to make this thing big enough to attack over whatever exists on the field and win. That does lead to some brick hands. I played around with a couple of different concepts for engines. As you saw in the original list, he was playing Unizombie and the Shiranui Tuner. That allowed you to play some synchros in the extra deck. I ended up cutting that. I think I wanted to go more for just straight Horus, not play around, because what I found was you could play Barone in here, you could play Chaos Angel and just like pretty much never get its effect to its light monster effect. But in testing that out, I always felt like I was trying to warp the play I was trying to do around just summoning the one monster, and while Barone is good, it took away from being able to do some other stuff that I felt the deck just did better, more naturally, and so this is where I ended up. Now, I gotta say, the Horus engine in this deck is ridiculous just because of that discard off of Insetti to search for the King Sarcophagus. If you were to open with Insetti and White Baking, those two alone, without accounting for any mills from Zombie Vampire, give you a 4K King of the Skull Servants. So it's pretty cool. We'll run through the list pretty quick right here, and then I'll show you guys the interaction between Insetti and White Baking to show you how that all works out. So triple Skull Servant, no effect obviously, just necessary for a lot of the effects in the deck. Triple Lady in White, essentially no effect. The biggest benefit of this is it can be special summoned off of the effect of White Mare when it's banished, which it will be banished off of the White Prince a lot of the times, or it can even be banished off of the Allure. It does have some built-in protection for your King of the Skull Servant, so if it's on the field, it can't be destroyed by battle, but let's be real here, it's not ever getting destroyed by battle. That's absurd. But it does protect from spell and trap effects as well, and so it might be worth putting it on the field if you have to pass turn without winning. But usually if I can tell that I'm not going to win in the turn, I'll just link away the king and get it back on the next turn with something else. We have Mizuki and we have White Prince to do that, and so this isn't really that big of a factor, apart from being an additional link body if you happen to get the White Mare in your hand. We've got triple White Baking. This thing is ridiculous. If it's in your hand, a level 3 or lower zombie is going to be destroyed by battle or card effect. You can discard it in order to protect it. That might be relevant with the King of the Skull Servants, but its effect when it gets discarded is what we're playing it for. So when it gets sent to the graveyard, you get to search 2 Skull Servants or 2 Skull Servant mentions out of your deck. Usually when I'm searching, if I don't already have the White Prince in hand, I'm going to grab the White Prince and then either my normal summon and the White Princess or the White Baking so that I can combo off with it if I know that I'm going to have the banish for Lady in White, or I have to banish this off of Allure or something along those lines. Because after you add those 2 cards in your hand, you then have to discard one. So then I'm always going to make sure I have the White Prince for the discard, because then it just sends one Skull Servant and one Lady in White from your deck to the field, thins the deck a little bit, loads up on those names for a king, and just really solid interaction all around. Excellent, excellent support card Konami made here. The White Prince you can discard to either return a Skull Servant or White Mare from the banished zone to the graveyard. It's only ever going to be Skull Servant because we're just playing the one. I tried two. There are certain instances where you can get double White Mare off for like double Lady in White special summons. It's just fairly rare, and it really doesn't do as much for you as I would have hoped it would, and so I cut it back down to one. It's fine at one. The White Prince, as we already mentioned, when it's sent to the graveyard, will send a copy of Skull Servant and Lady in White. King's your win condition. It gains 1,000 attack for every Skull Servant or another copy of itself that you have in the graveyard. It's really easy to get this thing up to like 10, 11, 12,000 attack within a turn, so that is easily, like if they don't play Mirror Force or Magic Cylinder, you're usually going to be able to attack for game. And Effect Negate does screw you up pretty bad, really just in general. If they can negate like your first effect, you're probably in some trouble there. The only follow-ups you typically have are going to be all of the Horus stuff, and that's why we're playing it. We've got our triple White Princess. This is your best normal summon in the deck. On normal summon, it is a Foolish Burial for the White Prince. So it will send the Prince and then send the Skull Servant Lady in White. And then while it's on the field or in your hand, you can send it to the graveyard, and every monster on the field loses attack and defense equal to its own level times 300. So what this means generally is your king is only going to lose 300 attack, and it counts itself as a Skull Servant, so it boosts it by 1,000, so you're netting 700 additional attack points, while everything else on the field is typically going to get dropped to like less than 1,000, maybe in rare conditions just above 1,000, which typically will be enough of a gap for you to attack for the game there. By far your best normal summon. The only issue is drawing multiples because you can't normal summon it twice. You can use its effect twice, and really that's something to mention. You can use all of these effects twice, other than the White Baking is once per turn, which is probably good. But if you have a way to special summon this, like off of a Zombie Vampire Mill or a Mizuki, you can do its Foolish Burial effect again. It can do its attack reduction effect multiple times. So there are other ways to use it, but for sure you want to try to get this in that opening hand. Just try to get your plays rolling. You really don't have another normal summon in the deck that you'd rather summon anyway, so it fits in perfect. We've got the one Shireen. It can special summon itself, and then you discard a card, so that facilitates this effect and this effect, as well as just filling up the graveyard with these if you happen to draw them, because you don't ever want to see these in your hand. And then it'll mill 3, which can help set up the graveyard even further. Outside of that, it's only there for that. It's an extra body, so we're going to link someone with it. There's a lot of link monsters that are fairly generic in the deck, and so it works out really well in here. If it was at more than one, we'd play it at more than one. Triple Mizuki. I was playing around between 2, 3 Mizuki, considered cutting to 1, but you do kind of want to see it as a discard outlet for the Horus stuff or for, you know, something else. And at 3, it's just the most likely that you're going to see it in your hand and be able to discard it. It's not good for anything else, but when it's in the graveyard, if you've already gotten one of these stopped at some point, just getting a free one back on the board with another 10,000 attack can put you in a very good position to win if you're in a simplified state. Like if they had to burn a lot of resources to clear out your board or whatever, it's a going second deck, but going first, you can still put up an okay board that they will have to clear out, and if they can't OTK through it, you can just get your king back with the Mizuki, if not with the White Prince, and just continue on, try to win. Now the Horus stuff is standard here, I suppose. Triple Mseti and then one of each of the others. I was playing just these 3 and not this one. The problem isn't that you necessarily need the extra monster in the graveyard, the extra Horus to special summon. It's that you want the extra discard. So having that extra monster has made it a lot easier when you have Gold Sark on the field to just get that extra discard and force one of these effects off if you need to. We've got the one Foolish. I feel like it's self-explanatory. The 1-for-1 is also, it can special summon any of your level 1s. King is most relevant, but the other ones can come up if you're trying to force their effects by linking them away from the field. Triple Allure of Darkness. I tried out Prosperity. It just isn't really any more worth it, but it does cut you off from being able to draw, so it would ruin like your Mseti draw or, you know, whatever else you're happen to go for, the Vampire Suck or something like that. And so the Allure works just fine. Also, as we mentioned, that White Mare can get your banished monsters, either of these two, back on the field. So you can just banish one of these and it not cost you anything if you can get to that white mare. The one Feather Duster, this can be kind of an empty slot. I almost want to just play a third Forbidden Droplet because this is so relevant when you're going second, or possibly the card Destruction because of how many discard effects are in the deck. It just seems really cool, but it really wasn't worth it. I think something along the lines of going second hate would be best. The deck's already super tight because of how many Skull Servant monsters you have to play in order to make the deck work right. And so you can't really fit like a whole hand trap lineup in there unless you're going above 40, which could very well work as well, but we're looking for consistency. Double Droplets just to try to shut down the board. Because you get that discard, it can facilitate your effects on your opponent's turns as well. The Gold Sark because you need it, and instead of playing multiple Gold Sarks, I went with one of Gold Sark, one of the Field Spell, and one Terraforming because it's essentially 3 more copies of the Imseti, or I guess 2 additional copies of the Gold Sark at that point by extension. You know, there could be negates, whatever. But playing it like this meant that I was never opening multiple Sarks in a turn ever because we only play the one. You could still open like both of these or both of these, and then one of them is kind of irrelevant, but you can still do something with this and this that you wouldn't be able to do with just 2 copies of these. So I like this quite a bit. It works out well enough, so that's the way I'm going to leave it. In the extra deck, we've got the one Anima. There's a lot of level 1s, and a lot of them also have a benefit from being sent to the graveyard, these 6 in particular. And so you do get that steal, but it's really a lot more just to force the effects of whatever you're linking away. The IP and SP, it's really easy to make it in this deck. This deck has quite a bit of swarm capabilities. Even if you don't have enough to make the Skull Servant big, the King big, you can just summon it anyway and then put more resources in the graveyard to make it again later, and then it's just an additional body for link summoning. So it's pretty easy to get to a lot of these link monsters. The one Dark just fits in the deck pretty nice. The one Vampire Sucker, I'm mostly using it as a draw one and an in-between to the 3s because none of the 3s require 3 monsters. And you can give yourself a draw by giving them a monster in defense mode. I'm only ever doing this if I'm fairly certain I have the King attack for game, because then that defense mode monster doesn't matter unless it's their only monster. The one Vampire Fascinator, this is a really accessible card. Most of your monsters are zombies. You can summon it on your turn just to get an extra body and then like link into the Vampire Sucker. You can do it on your opponent's turn to steal something out of the graveyard that you think they're going to try to target with something. You know, whatever the case may be. I've liked it a lot. It does lock you into zombies. Otherwise, it would be absolutely busted. You could just link into this and then climb right up into the access code with 5,300 and to the removal right there. So it's probably good they put that limit on it. We've got the one Heavenly General. This does facilitate the access code. You can easily make a link 3 most of the time in this deck so long as you aren't getting completely shut down. And then you can just, you know, target any of your zombies, special summon one of your spare ones from your hand, link it away for the access code. Or I suppose the Appaloosa, but that's probably not really worth it at that point because it's only 2 materials. Plus bonus points if you're linking away something that generates you advantage out of the graveyard. So good card all around here. The one Crusadia Equimax, this is probably not necessary. I just thought it was funny because you can summon 2 kings and then have them both be pointed to by the Equimax and then have it at like 20,000 attack. So I thought that was funny, and that's why it's in there. You do not have to play it. There's plenty of attack points to go around here, but definitely a nice little interaction there. It's fun to do. And then we got some staples here. Appaloosa for the negates, access code because he's a big boy and he removes stuff, and the one Goddess of the Closed World. This is pretty easy to do with the IP. You can put plenty of monsters on board and then steal something from your opponent to make it. And then for RXZs, we got the 2 zombie vampires. This is absolutely essential in this build, I would say. The mill 4 and the special summon is unbelievable. The number of times I'm milling stuff that gives me a ton of advantage off of just the mill, and then the special summon allowing just a bunch more link summons is so good. I would absolutely not play it at 1. I think 2 is phenomenal because even if you don't win in a turn, you can easily make a new one the next turn and just do it all again. And by the time you've done it twice, this guy is going to be more than big enough for the purposes you're looking for. We've got the one number 38 in here. I think it's important for if you do get stuck going first because you don't have room to fit a lot of anti your opponent's turn stuff in here. And so this is that. A spell is usually a starter card and you can just steal it away from them, so that can be relevant. And we're also playing the 4 names, so it's pretty easy to put the zombie vampire and the number 38 on the board in the same turn. You get your mill, you get your special summon, and you get your spell negation. And then finally the one Typhon, because it does happen where you have to play through a board. Say you normal summon your white princess, they negate it. You can dodge the negate and still get the mill by activating its second effect as a quick effect, but typically that's not going to be all that advantageous to you if you got stopped right there and you don't have a follow-up. So you can just let it get negated and then make the Typhon on top of it so you're not stuck with like absolutely zero. But I think this is a super sick deck idea. You should definitely try it out. Apart from the Imsetis, I think it's also fairly cheap. Like the whole deck is probably like $20, and then the Horus stuff is like 150 or something like that. So if you already got the Horus engine, you can pick up the rest of it for pretty much nothing. So give it a try online, even if you don't intend to buy the cards, because it's really it's a fun time. But if you do intend to buy the cards, don't forget that TCG Player has that Cyber Weekend sale. I think it's 10% bonus bucks back on every purchase if you're already a member of their their membership thing I don't like. Then I think it's 14% plus your 1 to 3% based on how long you've been a member, whatever that is. So you can pick all that stuff up and get a little bit back for yourself. I'm going to take you through the interaction between Imseti and White Baking here so you can see how ridiculous that is. Anyway, here's that little combo. All right, so for the test hand here, we have to play against our own deck because you need to have a deck on the other side of the field for the Zombie Vampire to do its mill. But we'll just run through this here real quick. We've got the Imseti. We'll discard the White Baking, and we'll get our search, and we'll get our draw. Now, the draw is going to be the Skull Servant because it's unshuffled, but it doesn't matter what it is because it's a discard, essentially. Then we're going to get that White Baking effect. We're going to grab 2 monsters. So you can go, depending on the other cards in your hand, like I said, I want the White Prince for sure. And then because I don't have a normal summon here, I mean, I guess technically I do. Probably not the best choice, but you never know. So I'll grab the White Princess as well, and then it's going to force that discard, and we'll discard the White Prince. The White Prince is going to activate in the graveyard, and we'll send the Skull Servant and the Lady in White. And so now in this graveyard, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 names for that King of the Skull Servant, and we're not done yet. So now I'm going to normal summon. I'm going to get that second White Prince effect off of the Foolish Burial. I'm going to get the second White Prince effect to send another Skull Servant and Lady in White. So we're now at 7 monsters. They're all going to get banished to summon the king anyway, so it doesn't matter. We'll use our King Sarcophagus, activate its effect, discard whatever you drew. Hopefully it's something advantageous. And you just want to make sure you're hitting one of these 3, so whatever one you want. And then we'll get them both back. And right away, we're just going to make the Zombie Vampire, so it doesn't really matter. If you wanted them both back in the graveyard for certain, I suppose you could just link them away. So that it's not sitting as material, but either way it's going to get destroyed and they'll go to the graveyard, or you're going to use it again on the next turn anyway. So we'll use the effect, we'll detach, and we'll mill 4 of each. Now I'm going to have a hard time figuring out which 4 are mine. I guess it doesn't really matter, so I think these 4 are mine. What you special summon makes no difference at all. The fact that they're all Skull Servants is pretty nice because you could just summon it and then link them away for something, and then your king is even bigger at that point. So we'll just grab whatever, and we are going to link it away. So even if it wasn't, like you had no Skull Servants, even if it was another zombie, you could still do the same play with Vampire Sucker. But in this instance, you can make the IP, and then worst case scenario, you can SP with your Zombie Vampire to protect, whatever board you want to protect. But even in the off chance that you were to mill like only spells, which is unbelievably unlikely with how little that lineup is in the deck, you could still just use this effect to send itself. This will drop down to 600 attack. We don't care about it. It'll return when we pass turn anyway to 3,000, and it gives you that extra name in the graveyard. Right here, we can special summon the Vampire Sucker. If you want to give them one of their monsters back to get your draw, you can. It can give you an additional body on board to then link up into this to get a new monster out of their graveyard. It can link up into the Raten if you had something else in your hand that you could then get the special summon off of. Whatever you want to do, you can make the dark. We'll make the dark because it doesn't really matter here. And so now we have so many in the graveyard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And we're going to mill 3 of them. So we're going to summon a king with 10,000 attack on it. And how we're going to do that is with the White Prince, it'll banish itself plus 2 monsters I mentioned, Skull Servant. So I always want to do a Lady in White because the White Mare got milled this time. It typically will not necessarily be milled. You can search it off the White Baking if you already have like this or the White Prince in hand, whatever the case may be. And then we'll send this one also just because the White Mare can return it as well. and then we get that special summon. So off of 2 cards, we've got our Zombie Vampire with a material to mill again and special summon again on the next turn if it doesn't get removed, a 10k attack King of the Skull Servants, and a Dark or whatever Link 2 you want. IP is probably your best bet because you can SP with either of these 2. This is really easy to get back, especially if you're able to maintain this. And even if you're not, we play the second one, so you can just make it again and try to mill like the Mizuki or something to get it back for free. And that would be how you set up a OTK board, I guess, on your opponent's turn. So that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you guys are going to have a great holiday with your families, spend time with the people you care about. It's always going to be important. Happy deck building. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Goodbye.